I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to turn to Commissioner Zhang for our land acknowledgement this morning.
Thank you. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to make the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will, some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hopes of a better life, and some have lived on this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We are standing on the ancestral lands of the Dakota people. We want to acknowledge the Ojibwe, the Ho-Chunk, and the other nations of people who also call this place home. We pay respects to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the treaties made by the tribal nations that entitle non-Native people to live and work on traditional Native lands. Consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that brings us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events.
Thank you, Commissioner Zhang. We have the agenda of May 2nd, 2023 presented for approval. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Zhang,
Aye.
Fredum,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Moran,
Aye.
Ortega,
Aye.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
and Matas Castillo.
Aye. We have the minutes from April 25th, 2023 presented for approval. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Zhang,
Aye.
Fredum,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Moran,
Aye.
Ortega,
Aye.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
and Matas Castillo.
Aye. Next up, we have our proclamation for Tech Month, and Commissioner Moran is going to present the proclamation. If you're here for our Tech Month proclamation, please come to the dais and join Commissioner Moran. Good morning, everyone. Welcome.
Well, good morning, Madam Chair and members. I am excited and really honored to be doing this proclamation today, which is on our tech industry. And so I'm going to read the proclamation. We have a few folks here who's going to speak, and then we're going to end by allowing our director, Lean Becker, to close us out, I think. Yes. All right, the proclamation. Whereas the tech industry is critically important to the state, local government, and a key component of an innovative and dynamic ecosystem critical to Ramsey County current and future economic success. And whereas the key role of tech workers are highlighted during the COVID-19 pandemic through their work supporting virtual learning, online commerce, and many other essential functions to help society continue to function in a safe and social distance way. And whereas about 12,923 people working in tech occupations in Ramsey County, just over 3.8% of total employment in Ramsey County, while the national average for such occupation is about 3.4%. And whereas employment in the tech occupation is projected to grow 0.3% on an average annually through 2027 in Ramsey County, while average change in employment overall is likely to remain flat. And whereas, in addition to just over 200 new tech professionals is needed to satisfy job growth, an additional 45,050 tech professionals will be needed in Ramsey County through 2027 to replace the retirements and job changes out of the field. And whereas the unemployment rate in tech positions sits at 0.9% in Ramsey County, that's like 91 people. compared to about 2% of the overall across all occupations. And whereas high demand for tech workers means high wages for many in the field, the average annual wage for tech occupations in Ramsey County is about $102,600, over the $35,000 more than the average of all occupations in the county. And whereas there's a continued need to raise awareness, overcome barriers, and welcome Ramsey County residents from all backgrounds to explore and succeed in tech careers. Now, therefore, it be proclaimed, the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners and County Manager hereby proclaim that the month of May 2023 as Tech Month in Ramsey County, and be it further proclaimed that Ramsey County Board of Commissioners encourage all Ramsey County residents to honor and celebrate the contributions of the tech industry and all tech workers in Ramsey County. Thank you. So we have this wonderful, beautiful proclamation that we're going to pass on. And I think we're going to open up with our own council member, Chris Tolbert.
Well, could we have the other folks
Introduce yourself.
maybe?
Yes, please.
Okay, please introduce yourselves. Yeah,
Hi, my name's Sam Drong. I'm with Repowered.
excellent. Nice, Sam.
Hi, I'm Caroline Karanja, and I'm with Hack the Gap.
Good morning, I'm Mary Rick. I'm Director of Business Development with the City of St. Paul.
Well, thank you for inviting us here. It's great to be with you, commissioners. The reason I'm here is because I am co-chair of Full Stack, which is St. Paul's program to attract, retrain, and grow jobs here in the city of St. Paul. And also, I'm on the workforce board as a city representative. And I think the combination of those two things has been great in the collaboration that we have. I do want to make one kind of asterisk, and I think this is something that I had to learn, and I know, like many of the commissioners on this board, you're not tech people as well. I'm not either. And actually I learned this from Scott Burns, who's going to speak soon. When we first were creating what became Full Stack with the Innovation Cabinet, it first was the Tech Cabinet, and we changed the name to the Innovation Cabinet because it's really tech and innovation. And the example that Scott used was, it doesn't matter if you're creating a new app that does something really cool or if you're creating a new vacuum that works better. You're innovating and you're driving it and you're making business and you're making yourself successful. And I think that's really important. So it's really tech and innovation that we're working on. And I just want to say, because I think this is important for commissioners to know, the partnership that we have between Ramsey County and St. Paul right now is just unprecedented. The collaboration with our workforce board under the leadership of Director Becker and Full Stack through Mary Rick has just been amazing. And it's because we have two great leaders who I'm sure you've both seen. It's just when you have superstars who are workhorses that go like that, you just say yes and let them work and get out of the way. And they really have. And we're lucky because the workforce board and Full Stack have really collaborated, and we're all on each other's committees and we're talking very often. And I just want to point out why it's so important that we invest in this tech and we invest in this ecosystem. You see what's happening at Osborne 360, started by Scott and other investors. That ecosystem of private businesses, of entrepreneurs, is just amazing. You go over and you look at the Allen building, you got Primordial Soup. They're creating 3D gadgets that help doctors doing very specific surgery where they're getting news from that doctor to come in and do it, and they're doing it right there, amongst other things. You have Lab 651, which is helping companies across the world improve the products that they have. When they have a mistake, they call Lab 651 and they go help them. You have Lunar Startups, you have Youth Lens, you have Mintronics and Ecolab, some of the big staples. Even though they're huge corporations now, they're doing some of the most innovative work in the world right here in the city of St. Paul. And we soon will have Lockheed Martin doing extremely innovative work right here in St. Paul. That's from the jobs perspective. From the employee perspective, I think it's really important to recognize how great these jobs are, and training workers to go into these jobs are important. We have a boot camp in partnership with Ramsey County, Full Stack, that sends young people and adults to a tech boot camp. Averages about 14 weeks. the average person comes out with a $13.41 increase in their starting salary. The starting salary averages $32.92 an hour. Now that's a family supporting income right there for people who often were making minimum wage, go to this for 14 weeks and come out making that. That's just great. The last thing, and then I'll pass it over, that I found why I love this work in full stack and in the innovative community is it's full of entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurs are some of the most unique people that I've ever met. Think about the courage to be an entrepreneur. Think about the courage. I know where my check's coming from every week from the government. Think about the courage of an entrepreneur to bet on themselves, to bet on their idea, and just go with it. It takes a lot of courage to do it, and this space is full of entrepreneurs, and I think it's our duty as the government. We're not going to be the entrepreneur. We're not going to do that. But to support that ecosystem, to make the connection between the young entrepreneur and Ecolab or Mintronics, to create that community here in St. Paul. And that's really what we're working on. That's really what we're going to highlight here. And part of what Full Stack and we've been doing is Tech Month. So go to the Full Stack website. There's events almost every day, young, old, different sectors. They're all here in St. Paul. A lot are at Osborne, some are at the Creative Enterprise Zone, some are at the universities. But that's part of that ecosystem we're trying to create, and your support's been very helpful. So thank you very much, and I'm not sure who I'm passing it to.
Thank you, Councilmember Tolbert.
Hi, my name is Jeff Tollefson. I serve as president of the Minnesota Technology Association. We're a coalition of about 200 companies that are tech producers, but mostly tech-enabled. Companies like 3M, Ecolab, Cargill, most of the major employers in town. And I'm really here to acknowledge the great work being done in Ramsey County and the city of St. Paul. Between what Ling and Mary and others are doing, and my old friend Scott, it's just great to see St. Paul being really a leader in our state, in Ramsey County, in terms of building the tech workforce of the future. There's a huge supply-demand imbalance that we're seeing not only currently, but it's only going to exacerbate over the next 10 years, is the demand for digitally skilled, employment-ready professionals continues to grow, but we're not developing that pool of talent. And to see the work that is being done in Ramsey County, in St. Paul, to develop that tech workforce of the future is really gratifying. Whether it's the Right Track program of St. Paul, the St. Paul Public Schools and its support of programs like Genesis Works, helping high school students get a tech internship during their senior year of high school. There's a lot happening in this city, which you should be proud of. Tomorrow, we are proud to host an event called Tech Connect. It's a conference that will bring in 400 tech professionals from across the state here in St. Paul at the St. Paul River Center, where we're going to be really celebrating the way Minnesota companies are leveraging technology in cool and innovative ways to drive their increasingly tech-fueled business models. So it's one example of a lot of events we've got going on in the community to really celebrate technology. So thank you for recognizing May as Tech Month in Ramsey County, and we're proud to be your partners in this important work.
Thank you. Good morning, Scott.
Thank you. I'm noting that Councilmember Tolbert is not technically sophisticated, but I'm the one using paper for my notes here. Yeah, exactly. My kids are still trying to figure out how I'm in technology, but I don't program. Anyway, it's great to be here with you. My name's Scott Burns. I've lived and worked in Ramsey County for 23 years. I founded a company when I was 24 in a St. Paul basement called Gov Delivery that you all have used for years. Ramsey County was one of our first customers. It's now called Granicus. It's located in the Ham Building. We built it up to 250 people. The company is now well over 1,000 people, with a lot of those jobs here still in Ramsey County, which I think is a tribute to the quality of company and workforce that we built. Councilmember Tolbert talked about, you think about entrepreneurs as betting on themselves, but they're also betting on the community they live in. And whether it was with that first company, Gov Delivery, where we sort of started in St. Paul, found support in St. Paul. Sean Kershaw in the government was working on economic development, actually came by our office, and that was part of what prompted us to move the business into serving St. Paul, because we said, he said that they needed some of the services we were starting to provide in communications area. That got us sort of rolling in that arena, and it was able to scale and grow from there. But we were betting on him when we launched, even though we didn't know it. We were betting on the community. We were betting on the workers we would go on to hire. And this is really an extraordinary place to build a business and to hire people. I more recently, we sold GovDelivery and merged it with Granicus in 2016. I founded a company called Structural in St. Paul, which we built up to 20 people, and then got lucky and sold to another St. Paul company, which doesn't happen in tech very often, called Agio, up on University and 280, a 500-person company with its headquarters here in St. Paul. And I'm operating right now as the chief of staff there. The other thing I have been fortunate to be involved with that's really been like the passion project of my life is Osborne 370. And we put that project together because we found this paradox in St. Paul where there were a lot of people not finding space, and yet the vacancy was high. So why is office vacancy high, but people are saying they can't find space and they're moving? And we started looking into that and found that we really were lacking building owners that were willing to put money into buildings and really build them up. And you've all been into Osborne. Hopefully, most of you have been into Osborne. I know your assistants have, because they use it for conference room space often. We have seen in there that sort of when you build it and you have faith and you bet on the community, that people do amazing things. And we have had, if you walked in there before the pandemic, what you would have seen is the most diverse, most vibrant commercial building in the state of Minnesota ever. And we're really proud of that. We didn't actually set out to build a diverse building. We set out to build a welcoming, inclusive space that was flexible, and it turned out that people were able to run with it from a whole bunch of different backgrounds and types of jobs. So just a few more things. I think a lot has been said about the importance of the investment in tech jobs and why they matter, higher incomes, also flexibility as people move through stages of life. These are jobs that don't just support families financially, but they're often easier jobs to work a family around. And so it's a very different lifestyle than somebody who's checking in and checking out of a job. And it's a positive lifestyle that we're often able to offer people in technology. The third thing is the pathway to entrepreneurship that it offers and to wealth creation. Technology, I've often thought, you meet a lot of people in tech who are sort of second, third generation immigrants. And the first generation might have come over and built a restaurant. And it's hard to build wealth with a restaurant or a sort of hands-on business like that. It can happen, but it's tough. It's a lot easier in technology. And so often those people are teeing up their children, entering them into tech, and the children are creating a lot of wealth for their families and for their communities. And I think that's an important element. The one thing I'll ask of you and sort of note is I think we're doing a better job here than in many places of creating pathways into tech. So there's big things you invest in, like Minnesota Tech Hire, but there's also like the work of Hack the Gap, investing in literally in individual people, helping them move from where they're not in the tech industry to in the tech industry, and just those bridge programs like the boot camp, other programs that are being offered that are bringing people into jobs. They're not all sitting down programming. Some of these people are designers. They're doing beautiful visual work. Those are all tech jobs, and they're all great jobs. And those investments that you make, are helping one life at a time, but you can also see them in the overall stats for the county, which I think have improved a lot over the years. So really appreciate the work and the recognition for our tech community today. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Scott. Director Becker.
Yeah, good morning, County Board Chair, Commissioners, County Manager O'Connor. Thank you so much for the time this morning. As you hear from the community, these are the voices, I have the privilege of kind of help inform our work. And I do want to call out a couple other things. I know there was a lot of conversation about the city of St. Paul, and I don't want to leave out that there's an incredible amount of tech happening in our suburban community that tends to be in that med tech space, and that's a spot that we've called out in our economic competitiveness inclusion plan that we want to continue to build and work upon, both up all along that Highway 96 corridor, all the way through Maplewood. Some of you might not know this, but this is an interesting fact. Like every catheter basically produced in this country touches some part of some business in Ramsey County. So there is significant supply chain happening along some of those corridors. And while Carrie's working on that business side, our Director of Economic Development, I'm focused on that worker side, right? How we are helping people fill those clean rooms to do that tech work. And so that's really important. I appreciated the conversations to Osborne. I know Commissioner Moran came over there with me to visit, and she was wowed by the space. And I'm happy to say that we actually are funding 4 different youth organizations, or not youth only leading organizations, but they're tech organizations that have opened their doors to youth and young adults. And we are also going to be using a small room there that overlooks 5th and Minnesota as part of a training space for county young people, really to get young people in our community to be in that innovation space. If you're in that space, you're seeing people, you're having conversations. It's a really great environment for our young people to see what they can be, not what they wish they could be. It really gets them into that space. So I also want to particularly thank our own county employees. The IS department, we certainly couldn't have made it through the pandemic and the many pivots in our department or in other departments. As we all know, we all had to change our work differently. And then lastly, I just want to call out that Tech Month that folks have alluded to here. On our own website, ramseycounty.us/Tech Month, there's a whole list of activities happening. And I do want to call out one in particular as we talk about increasing opportunity and reducing barriers. On May 24th, we're hosting an event called Data and Dialogue in partnership with MinTech and with Real-Time Talent. And despite employers increasingly emphasizing that skills are more important than degrees, 90% of all IT job postings in our county require a 4-year bachelor's degree. And this is significantly off the mark compared to other regions around the country. As we look at the East Coast, some places on the West Coast, this is not the case of the job postings. And so having these really deep, engaged conversations and partnerships with, Jeff's organization with MinTech is absolutely critical, because you heard the opportunity here. And as a community, we need to make sure we're opening wide those doors and that the employers aren't creating additional barriers that actually are unnecessary for these roles. And so we actually have a fairly diverse tech workforce relative to other areas in the metro, but not for our Black and Indigenous community. It tends to be a more Asian-driven community, but then that's where data de-aggregation becomes more important, because that Asian community isn't necessarily our Hmong community either, or Karen community. So lots of layers of things to think about, but really want to call out that particular event because that's core to our values in the county of what we care about and why this month is so important. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Becker.
Before we do this,
Yes.
I got to say a couple of words here.
Yes, of course, Commissioner Moran.
I was going to open up and just talk about the innovative, creative work and removing barriers work that Director Becker is doing. But you all said it, right? You all opened up and said it, so I didn't have to say it. But I take away with 3 things that I thought was really powerful, and I hope I can remember because I didn't have a pen to write them down. But one was that Ramsey County is going to have a space in Osborne building. And the visual of that is this, is that if you ever looked over 5th Street or know anything about the history of the 5th Street, where youth was just hanging out on 5th Street, causing havoc, now they're going to be in a room on the top looking at that visual and saying, and can see themselves doing something different and more powerful. This is going to be a beautiful visual. And the fact that someone can go through a 12-week program and come out making $103,000, transformational. And the last thing is that came from Jeff, who said that, in the age of tech, when tech used to be geeky, he called it cool. So he said it's a cool thing. And so it is a cool thing. It's the way of the future and just doing awesome work. And I just love the partnership that we have with St. Paul. And so I just leave it at that.
Perfect final comments, Commissioner Moran. We're gonna take a picture with the cool kids and the proclamation. Excellent. Thank you all. Thank you all for coming and being part of this really incredibly important work. Thank you so much. Good job. All right. I'm going to turn to our administrative items this morning. Commissioner Zhang.
All right. So for this part, I am moving, let's see, item number 4, 2023 Special Board of Appeal and Equalization. Do I have to read all of them? Okay. Number 5, Public Works Construction Quarterly Report for January 1st, 2023 through March 31st, 2023. Item number 6, agreement with the City of New Brighton for voting equipment and election services. Number 7, appointment to the Workforce Innovation Board of Ramsey County.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Zhang,
Aye.
Fretham,
Aye.
McGuire,
Aye.
Moran,
Aye.
Ortega,
Aye.
Reinhardt,
Aye.
and Modis Castillo.
Aye. Aye. Thank you. I also want to note, we often don't pull these because we've worked through them, and we always have staff in the room waiting to see if their items pass. So I thank you all for coming. I know you're here waiting, and we're good to go. So people off screen don't see that, but there's a lot of work that goes into this work, and appreciate that. We have one policy item today, and that's the presentation update on solicitation for critical corridors, community development block grant, and housing development. And we have Max Holt, who's here to present.
And we also have Ella Mitchell.
Thank you.
So we'll start with Ella Mitchell.
Yeah, all right. Welcome, Ella.
Great. Good morning. Thank you for having us. So this is sort of a fun timing to go right after all this workforce work, because we're also talking about the economic inclusion and competitiveness and inclusion plan. So we are going to update on the process for these solicitations and the evaluation process for the 3 solicitations that we held this spring. So we'll do a quick bit of background, and then we'll start with the critical corridor solicitations, then talk about CDBG, and then housing development. So again, this work is grounded in the Ramsey County Economic Competitiveness and Inclusion Plan, as you are all familiar. And these goals, we are actually hitting several of the strategies and actions from these goals in these solicitations. So we have here some of our goals around housing in the red box. And then critical corridors actually hits us on both sides of sort of the development strategies, the equitable development, as well as entrepreneurship and economic development. So I will start with the critical corridors solicitations. Get my notes. So as you may be aware, these are new programs that were launched last fall, and they're under the redevelopment category in the community and economic development team. So these are redevelopment programs that are grounded in major transportation, economic, and cultural corridors. So that's how we've defined critical corridors. They are funded by the Housing and Redevelopment Authority levy, and the funding available for 2023 is about $1.7 million. So again, these are redevelopment programs, but they have the added goals of boosting connectivity between transportation, housing, and jobs, creating more compact, walkable environments, enhancing pedestrian access and safety, and supporting vibrant business districts. So the 3 programs under the Critical Corridors umbrella are pre-development planning, commercial corridor initiative, and development and infrastructure. So we hosted the first solicitations for these programs in the fall, and at that time we held solicitations for all 3 programs at once. This year we decided to split them into a spring solicitation and a fall solicitation. So we have the 2 smaller programs, which are pre-development planning and commercial corridor initiative that we just held the solicitations for. There's about $200,000 available between the 2 of them. The solicitations opened on March 7th and closed on April 4th. Today we're doing this policy presentation, and then we will be bringing award recommendations to the HRA board on June 6th. And then development and infrastructure, which is our bigger pool, will be in the fall. That'll be about $1.5 million. So I'll talk about pre-development planning first. So the purpose of this program is to assist local communities in preparing for equitable redevelopment and public improvements within critical corridors. It also aims to facilitate pedestrian, bicycle, and transit access to connect residents to housing, jobs, and destinations while furthering environmental, public health, racial equity, and economic prosperity goals. And in this category, we received 8 eligible applications for a total of $293,000 in requests. 5 of those were in the city of St. Paul for $158,000, and 3 were in suburban Ramsey County for a total of $135,000 in requests. And overall, the applications included activities in 4 different cities: Falcon Heights, Maplewood, St. Paul, and Vadnais Heights. And then we have the Commercial Corridor Initiative. So the purpose of this program is to strengthen suburban small business pathways or small business districts by investing in pathways to entrepreneurship for racially and ethnically diverse communities and by supporting thriving main streets. In this category, we received 3 eligible applications for a total of $101,900 in requests. And again, the eligibility for this program is limited to suburban Ramsey County. And the applications included activities in 4 cities: Gem Lake, Mounds View, Vadnais Heights, and White Bear Lake. So the evaluation process for both of these solicitations happened simultaneously. We had evaluation teams with representatives within Ramsey County from CED, Public Works and Multimodal Planning, and Workforce Solutions. And then we also had some outside partners participate. So we had our Open to Business partner from the Metropolitan Consortium of Community Developers, and then also a representative from the Met Council LCBA program. All of the reviewers independently evaluated the applications, and then we came together and discussed them as a group. We then brought our rankings of applications to CED leadership, and so the leadership is reviewing and is in the process of making funding recommendations based on the evaluation team findings, as well as taking into account the geographic distribution of projects and overall funding needs. So our next steps is that we will be bringing award recommendations to the Housing and Redevelopment Authority Board on June 6th. And again, our next solicitation for critical corridors will be in the fall for development and infrastructure.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ella.
I'll pass it to Max.
We have a couple questions. Do you want to wait? Or?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I can wait.
Do you want to
Madam Chair.
finish, Max, and then we'll go to questions? Thank you.
Wait.
Okay, so our next solicitation we're talking about today is our 2023 Community Development Block Grant. This is for public services, housing programs, and facilities. This happens every year as part of the annual action plan process. So CDBG is an annual entitlement grant from HUD, and it is administered by Community and Economic Development. So the 2023 award is $1.2 million. This fluctuates a little bit annually, but is usually about $1.2 million, and it serves low to moderate income suburban residents and suburban low to moderate income census block groups. The City of St. Paul receives their own allocation, which can be used within the City of St. Paul. The eligible uses include public services. Only 15% of the grant can be used for public services. Public facilities, which include infrastructure improvements and nonprofit facilities. And then housing programs like housing rehab loans, critical repair grants, and affordable rental construction rehabilitation. Administration is up to 20% of the grant as well. So in 2023, here's our timeline. So we opened this solicitation in February 14th, 2023, and closed this about a month later in March. We then reviewed applications from March 21st till April 6th. We had an evaluation team that included Public Works, Housing Stability, and CED. And the public comment period coincides with those initial project selections. So that includes a public notice and then culminates in a public meeting on May 8th at the Roseville Library. The award recommendations will be brought to the HRA board on May 9th. We received 15 eligible applications within this solicitation, totaling about $1.8 million. 8 applications were for public services, totaling almost $600,000. 4 applications were for housing programs, approximately $682,000. And 3 applications were for facilities, about $550,000. There was also 3 eligible applications out of our housing development that could have been CDBG because they were the rehab of affordable construction in suburban Ramsey County. So through the public notice and through conversations through our evaluation team and leadership, these are our recommended CDBG activities by project type for 2023. They include public services ranging from $20,000 to $40,000 in grant amounts. You can see that there is work here in connection to the food resources work, food instability work that is occurring in health and wellness. And we have pieces here that play towards prevention and housing stability as well. In the housing acquisition and rehabilitation facilities category, we have grants ranging from $10,000 to $225,000. The $225,000 is actually our critical repair and rehab grant and loan programs. And I'll pause there on CDBG if there's any questions. Otherwise, I'll keep moving forward.
I think you're good.
Thanks. Next, we have the 2023 Housing Development Solicitation. So this is our second annual one-door solicitation. This includes approximately $14 million of American Rescue Plan Act, CDBG that we just discussed, our home funds, which is about just under $1 million, and then our Housing Redevelopment Authority levy. We're offering up to $3.5 million of HRA levy for this solicitation. This includes new construction of affordable multifamily rental housing, the rehabilitation of affordable multifamily rental housing, and then the acquisition for existing owner-occupied units for affordable homeownership projects by nonprofits. Our timeline here, similar to the CDBG, opened in February, closed in March, and we are currently in that review process, just ending last week on April 24th. And we'll bring these, the home awards, along with the CDBG awards on May 9th, with ARPA and HRA coming to the board and the HRA on June 6th. So we received over 27 applications, over $65 million in requests for our funding. So this is a very competitive process. 3 applications that were for single-family acquisition with a total request of $5.5 million. 13 applications were for the new construction of affordable rental housing with a total request of $32 million, over $32 million. And 11 applications were for the preservation of existing housing units with a total request of over $27 million. The geographic split is especially important for our HRA levy. We had 19 applications were within the city of St. Paul with a total request of over $50 million, and 8 applications for projects in suburban Ramsey County with requests over almost $15 million. Communities included Little Canada, Maplewood, Roseville, St. Paul, Shoreview, and White Bear Lake. The evaluation process for these applications was a big lift by staff. CED staff reviewed applications for initial eligibility. It was determined that all 27 of the applications received were eligible. Each application was then reviewed in 4 categories by an internal team that included CED, policy and planning, and finance. These scoring criteria were finance and project feasibility, which is 30 points, affordability, 30 points, organizational capacity, 10 points, and then strategic alignment and priorities with our economic inclusion plan, the Deeply Affordable Housing Initiative Engagement Report, and our Equitable Development Framework. Additional review after the scoring was completed by meetings with Housing Stability, City of St. Paul, the State of Minnesota, and Baker Tilly, which is the county's third-party financial consultant. So our next steps here are home and CDBG awards will come to the HRA on May 9th, so next week. All home funds will be for suburban new construction rental. CDBG is the projects listed prior in the last application. The HRA will be recommended awards will be presented to the Housing Redevelopment Authority on June 6th, and then approximately $14 million of ARPA recommendations will come to the board on June 6th. This will be hopefully our last ARPA solicitation. It'll be number 4, so this started in late 2021 and it is culminating here in June 2023. And then in summer 2023, we hope to open our emerging developer solicitation. We'll put the remainder of our housing development dollars with the HRA into that solicitation. More soon on that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Open to questions. Commissioner McGuire, did you get your question?
Yeah. Gee, yeah. Well, I guess I can, I'll I'll sort of ask it in general of all the applications and all the programs that we have. Can you just talk to us, or just give us a little bit about how you're communicating all these programs with our communities, with our cities? You know, we have 17 suburban cities and City of St. Paul, and so how are we working with our cities to make sure they understand these solicitations and which programs, and maybe they just have a project and they come to you and say, we don't know what it's eligible for. Can you just talk a little bit about that process of how we're reaching out to our communities and working with them on these solicitations?
CED holds a long-standing equitable development summit, and so every city is invited, and then that is held, was held quarterly and is now held twice a year. And so we all get together at one of the libraries and kind of go through all of the programming. Then cities kind of approach us with developers prior to a solicitation opening and kind of share ideas. While the solicitation is open, that kind of communication stops, and we hold pre-solicitation conference, as well as working with communications on social media, website, and other information is kind of spreading there as well. After the solicitation ends, then that kind of begins our normal cycle of that collaborative work with communities and development community as well. So.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. I appreciate that you're working with them and helping them figure out, you know, what they can do. So thank you. Thank you for that. Did you tell us what, one more question, Madam Chair. Did you tell us what emerging developers, or did you say you were going to tell us about that later?
I didn't dive into that, but okay. CED is briefly kind of defining that as new developers who have less than 5 projects, and we really are going to focus our community engagement within communities of color, as we know that the pipeline for developers of color is a lot smaller than our traditional white, larger developers as well. So kind of building up that ecosystem.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I look forward to hearing how that goes. But thank you for that.
Yes. Any other question? Commissioner Moran and then Commissioner Reinhardt.
I think this is a question for you. Under the critical corridors, let's see here. I think you stated there was $200,000 available for requests.
Yes, for the spring solicitations.
It's so you talked about in the pre-development planning. Is that the money for? Is that under the $200,000?
Yeah, so it's roughly $100,000 for pre-development planning and $100,000 for commercial corridor initiative.
Okay, and then you went on to talk about the commercial corridor initiative, where there's 101,900 requests. Is that under the same dollar? If not, how much money is available for that project?
Yeah, so we've sort of. We have about $1.7 million for all 3 programs, and we have internal guidelines that we're aiming to invest about $100,000 in pre-development planning, about $100,000 in commercial corridor initiative, and then saving the $1.5 million for development and infrastructure. But we do have some flexibility because those are just guidelines that we've, I think at the staff level, have made under the HRA levy pool of funding that we have designated for these programs.
So you have the capacity to fund?
Right. So in theory, we could fund all of the commercial corridor initiative applications, and then, I think it was $293,000 in the pre-development planning. So again, we don't have to stick to it has to be 100 on the dot, but that's what we're aiming for.
Okay. One other question. Under the recommended CDBG activities, you listed some public service and some housing acquisitions. What did this mean? Does that mean they're going to get the funding, or these are the people who apply for it? What does this mean?
Those are the projects that CED will recommend to the county board for approval.
Okay.
So you'll see those coming to the board next week on May 9th through the HRA board. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner Reinhardt.
I was interested in the public services. I guess I think of all of the things that we do are public services. So, but it's carved out at up to 15% of the grant. When you look at the applications that came in, over half of them were for public services, and about half of the total funds that were available. So, and I looked at the list here, but it's still. I was trying to figure out what the differences were and why there was a limitation on public services? Is it because it's not actual housing, or if you could just explain that a little bit, because it seems like there's a lot of need there, but we're limited as far as what we can do.
Chair, Commissioner Reinhardt. So the federal government caps CDBG spend to 15% for public services. Public services are kind of those direct services that a nonprofit or a government would do. It could be social services, housing stability, food resources, those types of direct services where you're often paying for the operating costs of a service. So the federal government caps that at 15%. So for us this year, only $180,000 are available in public services.
Madam Chair, out of almost 600,000 in requests. But I was also struck by the fact that the administration was capped at a higher amount than public services. We do pretty well, though, with the administrative costs and keeping those down, don't we?
Yeah, we do use our whole 20% of CDBG to operate. This helps us with staff costs, compliance around Section 3, which is diverse hiring, as well as prevailing wage compliance. And so we do use that whole 20% for the administration of CDBG.
Well, and finally, I guess I do know that with CDBG, in all of these programs, actually, it is pretty staff intensive, because there's, especially when you're trying to work with populations that haven't necessarily applied for funds in the past, and getting them through that process, or the smaller developers or service providers. And so I do know that it is intensive, and I know that you have, that staff goes and really does make it personal.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Reinhardt. County Manager O'Connor.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And Commissioner Reinhardt, on that last point, I would just highlight back to when we did the presentation a couple weeks ago too. You know, we talk about our internal goal within the HRA funding and the levy to work to stay under 10% on the administrative cost side. That's a stretch, but it's an important stretch for the reasons we're talking about today. So it's a good, I think that always kind of like skates by the wayside when we talk about it, but the importance of that is significant. Max, I wanted to just ask one question that I didn't prep you for, so I'll be interested. If you want to take it back, that's okay too. But so the economic competitiveness and inclusion plan's been with us now for, I'm going to say 4 years. I don't know if that's exactly right, 3 or 4 years. And it's, you know, it was this broad effort to set a baseline and strategic vision, and Ella did a great job of grounding at the beginning of her presentation. How do we continue to ensure that plan remains relevant within like the broader community and our organization as we go forward, since it's such a key part of the implementation strategies for our work?
Well, I'll try to channel Director Collins here. But I think we see the ECI plan as a living document, and so it's not something that'll be static for 10 years. I think probably every 3 to 5 years it'll be something that we'll need to rehash and see if our strategies and our goals and our measures are still aligning with there. To track our progress against the ECI plan, we have online with partnership through communications with called the ECI Tracker, so you can see kind of where we are at meeting our goals of the ECI plan. And with our 2022 annual report, which is our first annual report with the HRA levy, you can see how many units we're creating and kind of tracking against those big goals like, hey, we're in a deficit of 15,000 deeply affordable units, so how do we track against that as well? So I think it is a tracking and then just continue to collaborate with community and see where we're at with that as well.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you both, and thank you, Ella, for your presentation as well. Thank you, Max. I think, you know, Max, you mentioned that, you know, this will be the last round of ARPA funds, and I just want to highlight that we use those ARPA funds to really push money out into the community for housing projects to help us reach our goals. But with that money going away, we won't have as much money to distribute, and we saw how great the requests are. So it just really emphasizes how big the need is and continues to be, and that developers are working and they want to help us reach this goal. So hopefully we'll get some more funding somewhere along the way from our federal partners to continue to meet the needs of our community. So thank you for all your work. It hasn't been easy. You guys have been working amazingly fast to get that money out, and we really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay. It's a good segue into our legislative updates. We're in the last few weeks of session. Yesterday officially marked the start of the final month of session, and technically there's 21 days to the constitutional adjournment date of May 22nd. I think that we're still hopeful that they'll finish early. Government relations staff say the conference committees are still supposed to wrap up their work by 5 p.m. Friday or get it done over the weekend. The rules does not apply to taxes or bonding. We know that often is the last things to go. The Senate will take up the tax bill today on the floor. The bill isn't as lucrative as the House bill in terms of county program aid, city local government aid, or any of the housing or extra homeless aid. It does contain about $3 million more for Ramsey County for county program aid and $6 million in one-time public safety aid that can be used for personnel or equipment, and it's pretty flexible. The Senate bill does not contain the fifth-tier income tax, so the conference committee will be one to watch. The Senate's one-vote majority puts them in the driver's seat of trying to moderate any proposals, taxes or otherwise. The marquee events of last week were the House and Senate floor debates on recreational cannabis. After several hours of debate, the House passed the bill to legalize adult-use cannabis on Tuesday with a 71-59 vote, 2 Republicans voting for it, 1 DFLer voting against it. The Senate debated the bill on Friday afternoon and passed it relatively quickly after no Republican amendments were offered. There are differences between the Senate and House proposals that will need to be resolved in a conference committee, particularly related to treatment of existing hemp market and authority funding for local governments for licensing, oversight, law enforcement purposes. The Senate bill is much more friendly to local governments, dedicating 20% of tax revenues to locals and allowing local government to cap the number of licenses with criteria. The bill is headed to conference committee with conferees expected to be named early this week. I know specifically on Kenneth's bill, Lingbecker raised concerns around, the Senate bill has a delayed in the repeal of actions against charges, and it impacts workforce. So we're hoping for that repeal of marijuana-related drug offenses happens, or expungement immediately like it does in the House. But I want to open up if there are other things. There's a lot of things moving. We know Commissioner Ortega and I will be meeting with the chairs of transportation tomorrow to share concerns around the motor vehicle lease sales tax, among other issues on transportation. Lots of stuff still happening, but I just want to open if any of you have updates. Legislatively, Commissioner McGuire.
Just to let you know, Madam Chair, I know we've all been working really hard, with connecting with our legislators, and I just want to know that with all these issues going on, that the community corrections is still, hopefully we're working on that as well. I've been texting with the Speaker on our Community Corrections Act and our probation funding, and so I think we're all just doing the best that we can. Hopefully we're, all the many points of contact that we're making with them is gonna help them understand the great work that we're doing and the intergovernmental partnership that we have with them. Yeah. We're not lobbying them, we're just explaining to them that we need this money to do the work they ask us to do. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Commissioner McGuire. All right, we are gonna move to County Connections. County Manager O'Connor.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just a quick flood update to begin with. The river crested last week at 18.24 feet. Yesterday, as of 10 o'clock, it was at 15.74 feet and dropping. So the estimate then was that it would drop below flood stage on Wednesday evening. So it looks like things are trending in the correct direction. I think the biggest thing right now is even as the river has dropped below flood stage or does drop below flood stage, roads won't immediately open. It obviously takes time to clean up and assess. And so, we should just be prepared, and I wanted to say this out loud for residents who are asking questions or may begin to be concerned about why hasn't Shepherd Road opened back up, for example. We need to make sure they're safe. We need to make sure they're clean before we can do that. And once we hear more in our coordinated efforts with the City of St. Paul about when things will open up, we'll make sure you're all aware of that so you can be sharing that information. We'll continue to link to that information through our website as well as we go. But considering where we were 2 months ago and where we have ended through this flooding, the flooding was worse back in 2019 that we sustained downtown. And because of, there's a lot of grumbling about how cold it's been outside. I'm not here to tell you you shouldn't grumble, but be appreciative of this one component of the very slow snow melt and then continue to grumble. In a couple other places, I wanted to note that Ramsey County last week applied for a grant in bond markets and racial equity. We have applied on this grant application to the Public Finance Institute, working with PFM Consulting, and it's all in partnership with the Government Alliance for Racial Equity, GARE, that many of you know about. And I wanted to highlight and thank Jeanette Boyd-Kana, Prince Corbett, Alex Kutza, Susan Earl. They've all been involved in this work here, and we've submitted a couple of different grants in this space. But as we continue to think about finance, and when you're working with large, global, in many cases, financial institutions around bonding and investment, how do you bring in additional principles? How do you vet and work and figure out who you work with? One of our key priorities that we do think about is how do we get low rates and predictably low rates to serve this community? That's important. But how do we also think of those institutions with whom we're working, which are often sprawling and opaque and difficult? And this work focuses on that. I really appreciate the national effort, but I also really appreciate the local effort here from the folks I mentioned and others to dive in seriously to these questions and think about how Ramsey County is living out its values and how it invests, as well as how it does budgets and programs. Last week was the National Black Public Administrators Conference. It was the National Forum for Black Public Administrators, NFBPA. It took place in Minneapolis. It's one of the largest conferences of its kind in the country. There were more than 1,200 individuals from across the country who converged upon Minneapolis to attend the conference. And we had a number of attendees from Ramsey County. I see Prince is here today, Kathy's here today, two of many in our delegation who were a part of attending the conference. We had more than a dozen individuals representing Ramsey County and showcasing the great talent and staff that we have here while this event was going on just across the river. Ramsey County was also a sponsor to the event and a supporter. We had a table there for human resources, so thanks to our HR team as well, saying, hey, while you're in town, feel free to come on by and let's talk about not leaving town again, right? Great opportunity around talent attraction, retention, promotion, and really important for this community to host an event like this, coming off a number of tough years where whenever you spend time talking about the current or recent perception of our region, it has not been good, particularly when we talk about Black and Brown Americans and a lot of what they have seen through difficult pieces on the news following the murder of George Floyd. And I've sat in interviews with candidates where this has been a very important part of our conversations. And so for this event to come here, for Ramsey County to play a role in it, I don't think there's a way to overstate the importance of that as we think about trying to build and grow an entire region that we want it to be. And I thank everybody who came. I also want to acknowledge that there were some Ramsey County sessions that got included throughout the week's events. Reconnect Rondo, community engagement at NIDCAD, where early learning childhood resources and kits were distributed. That was sponsored by Ramsey County during COVID. There was a panel where I got lots of photos from a full room and a full panel up front of our leaders titled Sharing Power, Community-Driven Planning to Advance Racial Equity. Kathy Hadeen, Prince Corbett, Sarah Holly, and two community members from our Equity Action Circle gave that presentation. And then Prince, I also want to give you one last shout out for being recognized with a Host Chapter Award for all your planning work for the conference. Right. And one of the city administrators, Reggie Edwards, from just across the river as well, has really helped to spearhead this effort. And I'll just say, having been able to be close to some of this work as it came together in the planning, like it takes a huge effort to do these things, and it takes a local effort. And so to everyone who made last week's NFBPA conference a success, a huge thank you. And now for my final piece, I want to invite up Karen Saltis for a second. We're doing a proper send-off. Karen retired 3 weeks ago. We lost count. She probably does too. You don't even know what day it is anymore, probably, right?
Is it Monday? Is it Thursday?
But we wanted to bring Karen back and get to do a formal thank you and goodbye. And so today I wanted to just spend a minute getting to celebrate Karen Saltis. She officially retired actually over a month ago. She did agree to come back today after spending 34 years with Ramsey County. And many of you knew her in many different roles. And I'll say from my 10 years here and all my different roles, Karen has played some role in every single one of those. Karen started as an accountant in 1989 with Ramsey County, and Since then, she's had many different roles and assisted with projects across this organization. She worked in finance for the first part of her career and helped to do the countywide implementation of the Aspen system, which remains in place today. In 2000, she moved from finance to the health and wellness area and spent the next 2 decades leaning into work there and doing everything from leading teams, developing budgets, participating in anti-racism leadership work, serving as the director of the administrative division, and overseeing many administrative areas, all with a focus on improving services for the people we serve here in Ramsey County. And in the final few years of Karen's career in Ramsey County, she served in key leadership roles. I asked her to step in and serve as the interim deputy county manager for health and wellness, and she did a remarkable job in that space. And then I called her again one day, and I said, would you be willing to serve as the interim director of the Ramsey County Library? And she said yes to that role during a period of transition and challenge as well. And she led that team through the last budget cycle and supported them, brought different voices and perspectives into that budget process, really showcasing the work she learned over many years here with the county. She's finished as a lead within finance, focusing on our talent priority work during the end of her career, tying together all of these different components. And she's been generous in sharing those skills. And so, Karen, we wanted to bring you back and say thank you on behalf of all the leaders and staff you've had an opportunity to work with. You've made a significant impact here in Ramsey County, and I want to give you the last word.
Wow,
Yeah.
thank you. Madam Chair, Commissioners, County Manager O'Connor, it's been a great journey over the last almost 34 years to serve the residents of Ramsey County. And I must admit, it's been really challenging at times, but very, very rewarding. And I guess one of my biggest regrets is not being able to work more with Commissioner Zhang and Commissioner Moran, since you're both amazing, and I've watched you over the last few months really step in and lean into the work of Ramsey County. And, I didn't do this work alone, ever. It was always in partnership with other departments, other staff, my colleagues, and I really just had a great journey. When I started in June of 1989 as an accountant, I don't think I would have ever dreamt that I would have become the interim library director years later, but it really, over the years, the skills that I picked up in partnership with others really did help me to lead that, and I do appreciate your recognition. I want to thank the finance department. Alex is the leader for welcoming me in my last year. The HR department, Dr. Annie Porbeni is here with her team. It was really fun to be able to end my career working with all those staff and then leading some countywide initiatives with talent priority and other things along the way. That was the reason I would get out of bed every day was just that to be able to come in, serve, work with others, work across the county to do good. So I've really enjoyed working at Ramsey County, and I couldn't have imagined a better career path for me. And thank you so much. This was unexpected and really much appreciated. Thank you so much today.
Thank you. Thank you. Just wait. Don't go anywhere yet. Just wait. There's still some folks that want to say a few things to you. I'm going to start with Commissioner Reinhardt.
Thank you. I know that Ryan said you would be the last to speak, but that's not true. Because I think it's really important to know when you talk about asking someone to be an interim, in an interim leadership role, it is so much more than just filling that space. It's about, most often, well, it is about transition, but often there are issues that have been very difficult to deal with, and you stepped in, and I can speak obviously directly to the library board or the library interim director. There are a lot of transitions going on there and a lot of angst, and it was amazing to see you walk through that and guide and take that leadership on, even though it was interim. And so I think sometimes that's underplayed as far as the importance in an organization, because we wouldn't be where we are today with that library system and the library board and the legislation that we're looking at or doing with Anoka County without your leadership there.
Thank you.
And so I just wanted to say, on a personal level, I am just so impressed with your body of work, but the way that you took it on and did it with such compassion.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'm going to turn to Commissioner McGuire, but as I was thinking about this, Karen, you have excelled in all the roles you were officially assigned to, but even more so in those all other duties as assigned roles that we often joke about, but are really critical as gap fillers to an organization. And you took them, you said yes over and over and over, and they're not always the fun ones or glamorous ones or things that we can write in a job description, but you've stepped in and led them, and really appreciate your steadfast work for this organization and for the people's lives you've impacted. So you will be missed, and we really do appreciate you'll be missed but not forgotten. Commissioner McGuire.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm going to echo some of my colleagues' sentiments, but I'm just so grateful that we're doing this now, that we get to have an opportunity to just tell you how grateful we are for the work that you did and how important it was that you came in. I'm glad that you kept answering the phone when the county manager kept calling you, when he kept saying, I was like, oh no, she's going to say, now what does he want me to do? Which department do I need to problem solve? Because I knew that when you were asked to do, and you did do a lot of problem solving, you came in and you made it about the work and not about you. You came in, you were collaborative, you just helped in so many areas of our work. And we had a lot of, we always have a lot of areas that need these transition, and you were so amazing at that. And we are going to really miss you, but we're so grateful for what you've done, and just wish you all the best as you get to have some new adventures now on your own. But thank you so much for just filling those gaps and all those duties as assigned that you really did with such grace and competence. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Karen, as you walk away, I'll leave you with the thing I'll remember about you the most is when I stepped in, I'll remember my first day going over to the East Building as the Health and Wellness Deputy, and you have a whole day if you're going to meet with leaders and spend time listening, and that's the day when you also get to hear people's biggest concerns in that moment or their biggest needs. And, everyone comes in with a list, and everyone's list is extremely important. And I remember you had a list and you put it to the side and you said, I want to know what I can do to help you on your first day. And I think you carried that ethos to work every day, and that stands out. And it was just one punctuated moment in a long history here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We'll go to outside board and committee reports. We're going to start with you, Commissioner McGuire.
All right. Okay. Let's see. That's right. I get to go first. Yay!
We are.
Yeah, I know, and we are on a. I know we are on a schedule. Thanks, Madam Chair. I'll be fast. First of all, I want to thank. We did a great tour of the Plato Drop-In Center last Tuesday after our board meeting. It was really exciting to see. This is for our employees. This is a place for our employees that want to come in and work, that are working remotely but want to come into the office and have a space for that. It's a beautiful center in our Plato offices. Also last week, the Roseville Business Council featured the Rice Larpenteur Alliance. Kim O'Brien did a great presentation there, and it was filled with kudos for Ramsey County's partnership in the Rice Larpenteur Alliance and all the work that we're doing with them. And of course, the beauty of this alliance is that it's three cities of Maplewood, St. Paul, and Roseville, one county, and an entire community in these communities that are in that area, and they're all working hard to have a safe and vibrant community. I want to say that May 13th, this next week, there's spring community in bloom at our Ramsey County Park at Lake McCarran's. So that's from 12 to 2 on May 13th. Also, I attended the collective action team of the Ramsey County League of Local Governments. This is a committee that we formed that's going to look at taking a topic that we want to do some collective action around. We do a lot of topics in all of our meetings, but this is a focus area. Last few years has been on mental health, and this year I proposed climate change, and they embraced it, and so we're going to be proposing it. We're going to be proposing it to the board, and I believe we're going to vote on it as a membership, but we're going to be, along with a lot of other issues, we're going to be working to focus on climate change, because all of our communities are actually wanting to do work on that, and so the more that we can collaborate with them, the better, and so I'm very excited about that. So you'll all be hearing more about that, because I think it's going to start with our Ramsey County presentation that many of us are involved in. So it'll be Commissioner Reinhardt or Commissioner Mattis-Castillo or I will be presenting on that, and that'll be this summer. So we had a great tour. Shout out to Ling Becker. I don't know if she's still here. I don't know when she sleeps, but Ling Becker continues to amaze me, everything that she's working on. We toured the Northeast Metro Career and Technical Center, and this is just such a great example of the partnerships that we have at Ramsey County. But this is workforce with our high school students, and getting them into career opportunities that they could then make into long-lasting careers. And so it was a great tour of the Metro Career and Technical Center, which is next to Century College. It's on the same campus as that. Also, the New Brighton League of Women Voters, just a shout out, they had a meeting with Dan McNeil from Peacemakers, Minnesota. Dan's actually a Roseville resident. He's a Ramsey County person, and he heads this great organization called Peacemakers, Minnesota. Also on Friday, former Secretary of State Mark Ritchie, I was fortunate to accompany him at his table for the Books for Africa 35th Anniversary Celebratory Luncheon, and Dr. Annie Porbini was also joining us there. It's a great organization. And with that, just another special shout out to a Ramsey County nonprofit, TSE, which serves our residents with different abilities. And they had their annual fundraiser on Saturday, which was wonderful. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner McGuire. Commissioner Ortega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two things. First, Ramsey County had a public engagement for the Highland Mac Grove communities over the Blue Line Riverview connection, and that is the transit between the two lines and the alternatives that the staff has come up with community input. This is sort of a final, well, not final, but putting forth the work that has been done to date and getting input from the community. It was great turnout, and we were there the full two hours plus, which is unusual. Usually people come and go, and you could go home early. I was planning on staying there for about half hour, 45 minutes. I ended up 2.5 hours in the place. So great community participation. The other is a shout out to the West 7th Ford Federation, which is the district council for West 7th. Great job in recruiting lots of new folks coming out. It shows the demographics of the neighborhoods are changing so much as I attend all these district council meetings. It's amazing. And quite frankly, from a transit perspective, I am very happy because the younger they are, the more pro-transit they are. So that's a good thing from a transit perspective. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Ortega. Commissioner Fredholm.
Yeah, so last week we had our CAPRW board meeting, and before that we honored Kevin Adams, who was a longtime employee at CAPRW, served as a volunteer before joining the employment, and most recently served as our interim ED for almost a year while we searched for our new executive director, Sonia Gass. So it was great to be able to honor him and the work that he did keeping CAPRW afloat during the last year. On Wednesday, last week, I had a community conversation on public safety. It was well attended. We had a lot of representation from city electeds. I want to thank the panelists who stayed for the conversation part, Judge Bruce Peterson and Christopher Wynn, who is a a constituent in my district and defense attorney and serves on our corrections advisory board. Also, Professor Greenman from Hamline University joined us on the panel and also presented to all of us on the root causes of crime and interventions that have research behind them that work. And a thank you to former State Representative Paul Gardner, who served as the moderator for the conversation, and of course Amy Wozlowick, my aide, who did the bulk of the planning and logistics for the event. And then finally, last night we had a work session with the Joint Development Authority Board. It went really well. We talked about our project roadmap, plans to create an energy advisory committee for which we've tagged Commissioner Reinhardt to represent the county on that effort. We planned, gave some guidance to staff to develop a formal communications plan so that we're issuing joint communications, and also talked about the need for community engagement and how we can do that along the pathway as we move quickly to continue efforts to get the development off the ground. So we are continuing to meet, continuing to discuss, and trying to do multiple things at once, as well as the solicitation for Outlot A, or the thumb parcel on the northern part of the TCAP property that we own.
Thank you, Commissioner Pretham. Commissioner Reinhardt.
Well, I think that I will just piggyback on the meeting last night. It really was a great meeting. I think one of the good things, but also difficult things, is the fact that there has been so much pent-up desire to get this thing moving as quickly as possible, but also making sure, and that's where, when we sometimes can get ahead of ourselves and go, okay, wait a minute, we've got to step back and we've got to figure out, okay, what are the logical next steps? What do we need to get done? What is the timeline? We had a lot of discussion about the roadmap. And really, some of the things that I think were really important was to understand how much, the incredible amount of work that had been done on this up to this point, and then it stalled out for 5 years or whatever. And so, but that doesn't mean that all the work that was done before doesn't have value, because it absolutely has value. And we're seeing some of the positive things out of that, especially on the environmental side. And the ongoing environmental research and reevaluation, and it's not, especially when it comes to water and the environment, it's not a one-off, okay, well, it checked all those boxes, but and that's it. But every step along the way, there is a reevaluation to make sure that we are doing the right thing from the environmental standpoint, but also from the future as far as the energy standpoint and the things that we're doing there as well. And City Council Member Monson also, she does this for a living, and it was like, okay, I'm going to defer to her. I think we're going to make a good tag team there. I tapped Commissioner Fretham for the communications side of things, since I have attended some of the events that she has held, and we always get great feedback. Mm-hmm. And so I guess it's only fair that she tapped me. So, but it's exciting to see what's happening there, and really trying to move things forward in a very methodical way, and looking at and kind of going back and saying, okay, where were we before, and what is still relevant, and what needs to be relooked at, and so it's a learning experience, I think, for all of us. There was only one person there, the chair, that has been part of this for the entire time, because even for me, when I was appointed, I think I was supposed to go to my first meeting, and there wasn't one, and so because of the litigation and what we were going through. And so there's a lot of information, a lot of time, I think, that's going to be spent on just making sure that we get up to speed and do this right. And again, one of the things that I brought up last night was sometimes people forget about the fact that this isn't just a normal development. Everything that we're doing here, we have an opportunity to make such a huge difference, because it is larger than, the parcel is larger than downtown St. Paul. So when you're talking about energy, you're talking about climate change, environmental, jobs, housing, and affordable housing, and open space, all of these things, to have this where it's just ready for us to say, okay, what can we do with this? and it's not just a little piece at a time. So it is huge. We understand that, but we are very excited. The entire JDA, Joint Development Authority, is very excited about moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Reinhardt. Commissioner Moran.
Okay, Madam Chair. So it was a long week and weekend, but I I made a visit to the medical examiner office. Me and Commissioner Mike Chong, and I just remember it's in a location that I like passed by a million times and never knew it was there. But I kept sitting there in the beginning, like, why am I here? Do I really want to be here? I don't know why I'm here, right? But it was really informative, you know, to know that the medical examiner office is responsible for investigating sudden, unexpected, and violent deaths that occur within the county. And the office performs the autopsies and other forensic examination to determine the cause and matter of death. So really detailed, good information. I do feel like I got some information out of there, out of that, along with seeing the freezer where they take the bodies and things like that.
That was a big investment when you built that freezer.
I know, right?
It's a really big deal.
So I also had an opportunity to do a presentation with DHS last week at their managers conference that was titled "We All Do Better When We All Do Better." That was just with leadership and staff. My presentation was around equity and the social responsibility in state leadership. And they invited me, one, because Health and Human Services was just a big role of mine in the legislature, and looking at equity was really important in out-of-home placement for Black children and families, but also creating the Cultural, Ethnic, and Community Leadership Council, just to be in partnership with the commissioner of DHS to bring some diverse views to her, but also to have that be of value when we're looking at the disparities that we see within our communities of color. It's good to have lived experience and experts from diverse communities with the opportunity to be in her presence to share what that leadership or solutions can look like. It was a good presentation. I'm glad I was able to be there to impart a little bit. I also had the opportunity to attend the first Ramsey County Black Excellence Resource Group, which is a group of dedicated Ramsey County employees promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion within Ramsey County. We do a great job of that across the board, I believe. But this group mission is to support and empower Black employees within the county and to advance racial equity both within the county workforce and in the broader community. And for those who, this is important to me because I don't know if everyone knows the importance and the value of being able to be in a group of people who see the world the way you see it, who have faced inequities within the workforce and in different places. But even within that, to always do our best and expect to show up with excellence in that. And it was also a chance for me to be with Commissioner Carter, who attended that meeting and was celebrated for her dedication and support to the group. So they gave her a nice little flower with some rose and a nice little plaque as the outgoing commissioner, and flowers for me as the incoming one, and first time meeting the group. Also, I had a visit to the Church of Scientology, which is interesting. I was invited in to do another visit. I also participated in the ribbon cutting when they first came to St. Paul, so it was a chance for me to go back and tour. And it really was a discussion to talk about community and resources the church could provide to assist teens with overcoming drug abuse and how understanding human rights is important. And also was a chance to do a tour. So that was the key message that we left out. And they got lots of resources that focus around teens and overcoming drug abuse and looking at human rights. I also had the opportunity to meet with Cal. Cal, I'm going to mispronounce your name, but Cal Meestad from the sheriff office. And I asked for this meeting because I sit on the bail reform work group, who has been meeting since 2019. And I just wanted some back information about, there was no one from the sheriff office there. And when you're looking at bail reform, you need the sheriff office to be present. But I wanted to know some of the history of what that looked like. And Cal was very informative. He's a great guy. I like him a lot in his worldview about the work that he has done within the sheriff office. But also, I left with some information. There is a lot of work that has been done around bail reform that has been sitting dormant as they have gone through a pandemic and just, community with all their passion. There's not always one way of doing something. There's you have to tap into several other things too as you look at one thing. But I got some good information that I'm going to read before our next meeting. And I also attended the Metro 916 Career and Technical Center, which I thought was awesome, to look at the work they're doing in partnership with high school students. Lots of good work. And I ended last Thursday evening at a ribbon cutting at, I got Papa here, but I think it was Peepa's Lake Bar. It's a lounge. By that time, I needed a cocktail anyway. But it's a black-owned business located at 202 Cesar Chavez Street. They've been there a year, but they was doing a celebration of their being in business for 1 year, which was great to meet the owners of that establishment. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Moran. Commissioner Jones.
Great. So tonight, in partnership with St. Paul City Council member Nelsie Yang and also our phenomenal Director Ling Becker, we are hosting, and also several of the trades. So the East Side just has a bunch of several trades on the East Side too, and a lot of their training centers are there. So we are hosting an East Side Summit at the Carpenters Hall tonight. We have several folks who had signed up for conversations around how we can do better to engage in our different and diverse cultural ethnic communities, because it is something that folks may not be familiar with, and if their family members had not been working in the trades, they wouldn't know how to enter in, right? So we are hosting that with a lot of the cultural leaders in our communities. And it's open to the public, but we'll have food, we'll have a tour, and we'll also panel so that folks can hear about how to get into the trades. The second piece is going along with the tour with Commissioner Moran. I just left with a huge appreciation for our talented staff from the medical examiner's office, as well as emergency management and homeland security, that we are accredited nationally too, and that those are not things that come easily. Just kudos and hats off to the excellent and talented team that we have here at Ramsey County. The third one is I participated in the state's Community Health Services Advisory Committee regional conversations. I'm an alternate to this. And it was kind of like an orientation with the new folks, and some of the common themes that we discuss about anticipating needs or in our public health is, of course, affordable housing, our environment, and then this one is also the need for workforce and public health. And so I just thought it was very timely that last week we had a presentation about public health pathways, and that I was able to just share what the county was doing. So that just felt really good that the county, Ramsey County, is looking ahead too, and that we are being leaders in this. So I was able to share out a lot of the work in the presentation that we got. The fourth is also on the call. So on NACO, I serve on the Human Services and Education Committee. So we have our monthly call, and we got a legislative update, what's happening at the federal level, and then also about the CHIPS Act, that there's a child care provision. That's a piece where semiconductor companies, if they apply for federal grants, they have to provide a plan for affordable child care. So I just thought that that was just really impressive, and also that this is an issue about childcare that's being talked about at the federal level too, and what we already know locally. But also just makes me think more about like how we as a county can continue to get more involved nationally, because a lot of the conversations and maybe a lot of the bills that are being passed here may not even benefit us here too, right? Like they may have all these great bills, but because of the rules or requirements, it may not even get to the businesses here. So I'm just appreciative of the leadership of Commissioner McGuire that you will be leading, and yes, of making us, of getting us involved at the federal level. And then finally, last week was the Ramsey Washington Energy and Recycling Board. The annual report was released, and as a new person, I was just really impressed with the overall work that's been done, that continues to be done, and also about our thought and planning about trying to reduce waste, or like trying to reduce landfill. So that was my push at the board. It was just like, let's move up the preferred route of like reducing waste. And finally, I attended a school assembly for one of my son's school assembly, and their theme was environment. So I definitely mentioned that, hey, Ramsey Washington Energy Recycling has a tour that's open to the public. So I was like, we should definitely bring them, because I saw presentations from fifth graders who are talking about reducing waste, and also about like the numbers. I forget what the number was, but that eventually the waste goes into our water, into the ocean, and then pretty soon in the future, like there will be about as much trash in our ocean as much as there are fish. Wow. So that was just like the alarm that I was like, wow, if they're learning already that, like, let's get them here too. Yes. So that was the direct connection.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zhang. I just want to share a couple quick updates, and then we'll move on to our workshop. But yesterday, I want a special shout out to Ling Becker and the Workforce Investment Board, and Commissioner Moran put on a conference around the IIJA and workforce, leveraging our federal funds with partnership with our business community, and it was hosted at the Iron Workers Union Hall yesterday. It was a really great event, and really a start of a conversation for a pipeline for once-in-a-lifetime federal funds into our community that goes beyond just building bridges and roads and infrastructure, but also thinking about connectivity and investing in communities that have often been left behind. So a really great job. It had a great turnout and a nice panel discussion, so good work there. And then last week we had our Heading Home Ramsey first in-person meeting in a couple of years, where folks came together really to hear about the programs and directions. As you know, we're addressing homelessness and continue to advocate at the legislature. But it's becoming clearer and clearer that we're going to have to make some really hard decisions and prioritization, because, though we keep working at the legislature, it doesn't look like the money is there for us, not directly, and that we can apply competitively to a statewide pool, which means that the resources will not get to us in time for this winter. And so this is a really scary time and a really serious time, but it could bring us to see that our family shelter will close, that our warming spaces won't open because of the lack of resources. So, as a collective coalition, folks are having these hard conversations about who and how we prioritize and what level of work we can do to make sure that we're effectively addressing folks who are unsheltered in our community. And so we have just a couple weeks left of the legislature. They're in conference committee. The urgency is real, and so if you have any opportunity to connect with legislators to really share, but I'm trying to stay optimistic and positive, but it is becoming increasingly concerning about that we're going to have to prioritize people and people in our community. On a good news point, we have really talked about and gone deep and had a presentation about single point of entry. And this is something that we stood up during the pandemic because we had resources. It doesn't currently exist, but everyone agrees that if someone is seeking services, we need to have one spot, one resource, one phone number that they can come to figure out where there might be beds available, where there might be space available, so we can quickly streamline people from outside inside. And so really exciting on that development and partnership there. But it comes with a cost. It's about $850,000 a year. So if we're thinking about prioritizing resources and effectiveness, that's something that we may have to put on the top of our agenda, is just the administration of getting people to the right places 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as opposed to what right now is during work hours.
How much again is that?
It's $850,000 a year. It would be the ongoing cost estimate. On the other news is, as you all know, you get the Heading Home Ramsey sit reps that come from Leanna Med, and their team work really hard to keep that updated and current, and a lot goes into those sit reps that come through. And one of the great outcomes from that is we send that to our suburban mayors, our suburban councils, as well as all of us. And Mayor Crackmer from Vadnais Heights, a new mayor, has been getting those sit reps and reached out to myself and Keith Latimer, and we had a meeting with him, and he said, you know, every time I get those sit reps, I realize that Vadnais Heights hasn't been a part of the solution. We want to be a part of the solution. And so that's a really great example of how our suburban communities are paying attention and realize that they want to step up so that we don't have folks from the suburbs having to come to St. Paul and then St. Paul having to shoulder that burden alone, and that we can also accommodate people in their own communities because we know that's more effective. So so little wins and those little victories as we're doing this work collaboratively and continue to share the work. Just wanted to give that update. Today, we're going to adjourn here in just a moment, and then I'm going to turn over to Commissioner Reinhardt, who's going to lead our board workshop from Human Resources here in the chamber. And then this afternoon, Commissioner Zhang is going to lead our workshop on inclusive and respectful workplace policy down in 220 at 1:30. We'll take just a 5-minute break as we switch over to the workshop here this morning. And with that, we are adjourned.